have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
Maybe we should change the name of the show to Bad News.
Let's just call it The Resistance Lives Here, among other places.
Tyranny and rebellion.
Well, now we've had more than a full week of the Trump administration.
We're wrung out.
We are.
I got a little break in Ireland, but you can't escape the news. Anyway, in the news this week, you saw that Neil Gorsuch, who was called Scalia on steroids, is Trump's pick to move the Supreme Court way to the right.
Yeah, we'll give you a little more insight, I hope, than the mainstream news has given you. And, of course, Trump announced that he was retaining an Obama LGBT rights executive order. Yippee, right? No. He's planning a religious freedom order that would undermine it.
And the president's anti-Muslim order is being protested, of course, around the world, including by LGBT communities, for what I would call its stupidity, bigotry, and making us all less safe.
Several more anti-LGBT and everyone else Trump cabinet picks have been confirmed. Some are stalled, but may have been confirmed by the time you see this.
You want some good news? The Boy Scouts of America has ended its ban on transgender boys.
That's how the world has shifted when the Boy Scouts become the good news. Talk about disruptive. And the British government has confirmed about 100,000 pardons for gay men convicted.
100,000?
Yeah. Yeah, most of them are dead now, but
yes,
whatever.
But there's a way to apply. Republican plans...
Not if you're dead. Maybe.
Yeah, family can apply, and then we'll get into it. Republican plans to turn Medicaid into, pay attention to this, it affects us all, to turn Medicaid into block grants to the state threatens not just the health of people with AIDS and poor people in general, but all public services.
And wait till you hear about the flip-flop that Trump did on pharmaceutical companies and their drug prices.
And we will mourn the death of actor John Hurt, who came to prominence playing Quentin Crisp in The Naked Civil Servant. He died at the age of 77. We will bring you one of his greatest scenes playing a gay man.
From that movie.
Yes.
All right, so there are a lot of things to talk about with Trump, but I suppose we should go in reverse chronological order and start with the Supreme Court nominee, Neil Gorsuch.
Yes.
So you look at him and you think, well, geez, did Trump pick him because he looks like a Supreme Court justice, which seems to be his usual top criterion?
There he is.
Yes, he's so clean cut, he's so white, he's so male.
Almost any human being looks pretty good next to Donald Trump.
But he has a penchant for casting his appointees. So you look at this guy and you think, well, you know, he's well-spoken and he looks good. Maybe he's not who we would have picked, but maybe he's okay.
He's smart.
No.
He's smart. He writes well.
No.
Yeah, it's Jerry Nadler, our Congress member, who called him Scalia on steroids.
Well, the New York Times put him to the right of Scalia on their chart
but not as far out as Clarence Thomas.
Oh boy!
Silent Clarence.
Yeah.
Now, I think the most important thing to know about him in terms of our issues is that he is horrible on religious freedom issues, which are going to be coming at us fast and furious in the coming administration, from the states, and all these kinds of things.
And by horrible, we mean that he is happy to let people's religious beliefs trump all non-discrimination laws. He is famous for being one of the authors at the appeals court level of the Hobby Lobby case, then confirmed by the Supreme Court, where he said a corporation, not a religious organization, but a corporation owned and run by people with strong religious beliefs could refuse to participate in the Obamacare mandates that said corporations had to provide health insurance coverage to all their employees, including contraceptive coverage for women.
He says, hey, it's easy to protect popular religious beliefs like love your neighbor and things like that, but what we need to protect unpopular religious beliefs. That frightens us deeply because we know what the Bible says should be done to us, and that including killing us in the Levitical code.
Well, I have to tell you what frightens me the most, and this is something he said in a speech or a statement a few years ago. American liberals have become addicted to the courtroom, relying on judges and lawyers rather than elected leaders and the ballot box as the primary means of affecting their social agenda on everything from gay marriage to assisted suicide to the use of vouchers for private school education. This overweening addiction to the courtroom as the place to debate social policy is bad for the country and bad for the judiciary.
As opposed to the Constitution protecting us from unconstitutional laws.
Evidently, we are now to throw out the Equal Protection Clause and due process and go straight to majority rule in all cases from these stupid politicians and the voters who've been lied to and rely on them for civil rights.
Well,
it's shameful. It's unbelievable that this now is going to be the guy on the Supreme Court who is going to decide people's constitutional rights.
And the only hope, as you've heard, for stopping him, basically, since Republicans seem to be marching in lockstep these days, would be a filibuster, meaning that you'd have to get 60 votes, and there are 48 Democrats who could deny them that. But President Trump has said, I hope they then get rid of the filibuster, and Mitch McConnell, who was was upset when the Democrats took away the filibuster for lower court judges and cabinet appointments. Mitch McConnell is saying we are going to confirm him one way or the other. So that means that they do intend to do this.
He has also shown mixed but generally negative attitudes towards the rights of transgender people. A trans inmate in Oklahoma had put in a request for hormones and transfer from a men's prison. He turned that down. An employee of a company had asked, a trans employee had asked to use the ladies' restroom. The employer had turned her down. Gorsuch said that was fine because the employer's safety concerns were legitimate.
All you have to know, really, is that he has been heartily endorsed by the far-right groups, the anti-LGBT groups, and condemned.
The Alliance for Defending Freedom, the National Organization for Marriage are all cheering this appointment. I was struck by a couple of little things. One, he went to Columbia, and people have dug up his Columbia yearbook. And you know how in yearbooks there is sometimes a quote next to your picture and name and everything? His is a Henry Kissinger joke. I put this in quotation marks. Here's what it said. Here's the only written thing in the Columbia yearbook next to Neil Gorsuch's name. Quoting Henry Kissinger. The illegal we do immediately. The unconstitutional takes a little longer.
God. Well, he comes out of a famous right-wing family there. His mother was head of the EPA for 5 minutes under President Reagan.
Not successful.
And Gorsuch.
The other thing that scared me was, the new Republican senator from Louisiana, Kennedy, I think.
Cassidy, maybe?
Well, whatever.
All right.
He
Let's call the whole thing off.
He's the new Republican senator from Louisiana, and he was on TV being interviewed about Supreme Court picks, and he said, well, I want to talk to these people and get their view on things. I want to know how they feel about Roe versus Wade and Griswold versus Connecticut. Griswold versus Connecticut?
Well, Griswold is
that's the birth control case.
Well,
that established married couples' right to use birth control.
married couples in Connecticut.
Married.
Now, he
was on the Greta Van Susteren show, and what does she say to that? Thank you very much, Senator. Thanks for coming.
MSNBC is moving far to the right, and apparently that's the way they want it. They might, and CNN, you might as well become more liberal because Trump won't even send anybody from the administration on your shows anymore because he calls you fake news. I mean, this is where we are in this putsch, in this fascist takeover of America. But in terms of contraception, I can remember Mitt Romney being questioned about this during one of the debates when he was running for president, and he's saying contraception. Come on, nobody's talking about putting any restrictions on contraception. This kind of stuff. But of course, they have put many on, and that's what Little Sisters of the Poor was.
Yes, and that's what Hobby Lobby was.
Yes,
and it is Rick Santorum. We used to laugh at him for bringing it up when he was running for president, but now we have the new senator from Louisiana bringing it up, Griswold versus Connecticut, and Greta Van Susteren says nothing. Nothing.
And this whole business of opposing medical aid in dying is one of his biggest issues.
Yes,
so good luck with that.
Well, and again, it's a whole right to life argument, and it bodes very poorly for abortion. The View today. No, abortion's in the Constitution now. You can't get rid of that. That was Whoopi Goldberg.
Which clause was that?
Ladies of the View.
I have heard a lot of right-wingers
Many court cases have been overturned at the Supreme Court.
I've heard a lot of right-wingers try to soft pedal what's going to happen to same-sex marriage under a new court.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, you have 3 solid justices who think it was an outrageous decision to open up marriage to gay couples this way.
I call them treasonous.
And I can't imagine that this guy wouldn't join them unless a state passed it. But that could reinvoke the federal law, which bans it.
The governor of Texas has already got a plan. Yeah. He's bringing cases in Texas to try to separate benefits for married couples from actual marriage, but really his agenda is to get a marriage case, a same-sex marriage case, back to the Supreme Court just at the time when not only Gorsuch, but a second conservative justice has been confirmed, replacing one of the liberals or Kennedy, and boom, there goes same-sex marriage.
Yes.
And Roe.
There's a similar case in Indiana.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to remember, people, not only is Roe v. Wade not settled law in a country where those decisions can be overturned, but the right wing has never given up attacking it.
Right.
And they're not going to give up attacking it. You thought we could win victories and move on? No. The opposition may be smaller. And heaven knows we do not give up, I would hope, on attacking the decisions we don't like. But they are not going away.
They never gave up on opposing, I'll just say it again, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. These are 3 programs that they are dismantling as we speak, and that affects all of us, folks.
Exactly.
And we will talk more about that later. I'm disappointed in some of the liberals who, are speaking up for him and saying, he's such a nice guy.
We are very happy to be represented by Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who has made it her duty to vote against every Trump cabinet nominee.
Right.
And I think that is the appropriate stance, and I hope she keeps it up and maintains her resistance.
One of the other interesting things about Gorsuch is that the first Supreme Court justice he clerked for was Byron White, football player, who wrote the sodomy decision, saying it was okay for the states to ban sodomy.
He wrote Bowers v. Hardwick? Yes, he did.
1986.
But not when Gorsuch was clerking for him.
But he wrote that decision, and then he clerked for Anthony Kennedy. But
before Kennedy wrote the Lawrence decision.
But Kennedy, of course, is the one who's very conservative in many respects, most respects.
Yes.
But who wrote the 4 big pro-gay decisions over the last 20 years.
And I'm sure you've heard all the talk about this being a diabolical plot by the Trump administration to get Kennedy to resign from the court on the grounds that now Trump is going to appoint people who are whatever.
Well, all right.
All right, back to more of Trump.
Okay.
Well, the most amusing tidbit was that he promised an executive order to cut funding to the International Criminal Court by 40%. We don't give any money to the International Criminal Court.
Well, these executive orders, I don't see any Republicans complaining about them, which they did when Obama did them.
Look, they're complaining about the Democrats potentially holding up their Supreme Court nominee when they wouldn't talk to Obama.
It's all whose ox is gored.
It certainly is. What do you think about this proposal for a National Pride March June 11th in D.C.?
Look, this is some guy sitting in his, I don't know him, but he's sitting in his home in Brooklyn, and he saw what the Women's March did, and he thought he'll...
He's watching the Women's March on TV. How about getting off your couch and coming out to the march?
Right. So, look, you know, a true national march, I think, has to come from the grassroots. You have to
He's pretty grassroots.
You have to you have to organize people to come up with an agenda and decide
No, you don't anymore.
Decide what you're marching for.
No, you just have to say it on social media and let it catch fire.
Let me just say this. I think Pride marches are going to take place all over the country from now on, you know, et cetera. I think they will be more politicized. I think people will, you know, they'll have more of a political angle. That's the way we're going to show, you know, when a particular thing happens to the LGBT community, that's when we should march immediately, not in months and months and months.
Well, let's get to that. But I think we should march all the time, and people are demonstrating and marching every day. There's a group in New York called Rise and Resist. It may be across the nation, but they're meeting every Tuesday at the LGBT Center. And last night, we tape on Wednesday afternoons, they had an overflow crowd at the huge room on the third floor, hundreds of people outside the room in the corridors trying to hear what was going on inside, where there were more hundreds of people. So
they better break down into committees.
They better,
because there are about 100 issues to.
They have committees. What they need is a bigger room to have everybody in.
Cooper Union. That's where ACT UP ended up, which is about 500.
And
that's where Lincoln spoke.
We are having a march or rally this weekend here on LGBT issues. Saturday, 2 p.m. meeting at the Stonewall Inn, Christopher Street Park there.
This has been billed as a solidarity rally over the immigration issue, the Muslim ban, essentially, and that's organizing. And a lot of LGBT groups and elected officials have endorsed this.
Well, one thing that hasn't been talked about a lot with the travel ban is that there are LGBT refugees from Syria and other places that are stuck in Turkey, which is not terribly friendly to LGBT people, who thought they were coming here and are now concerned that they will never get here.
Or trying, let's talk about that whole thing. I mean, or trying to get out of Iraq, you know, where so many refugees have been, you know, Trump acted like he was so concerned about the people being thrown off buildings. I mean, first of all, to enact a ban on people coming from Iraq, who is the country we, quote unquote, fought to liberate, and whose people, especially from Kurdistan, are now fighting with their lives to try to kill ISIS, which Trump is not doing. You know, American troops aren't doing. They have some advisors there. Now he could get all Americans thrown out of Iraq, which the Iraqi parliament wants to do at this point, and they don't trust America anymore as a quote-unquote ally. Because this is insane.
Well, it is insane that they stop people from getting on planes, let alone the people they grabbed off planes when they got here. They conveniently don't want to talk about all the people they prevented from getting on planes who had visas and green cards and everything. And instead they're saying, we don't want to let bigots into the country.
Oh, yeah. Sean Spicer and this Stephen Miller, who these right-wingers, you know, the press spokesperson, and this far right-winger named Stephen Miller, you know, have the nerve to say, we want these people who come in here to support our values, regardless of sexual orientation, while they're working on, and we're going to get to this, while they're working on infringing upon our rights, eliminating our rights. I was going to say right and left, but it's just right.
Mm-hmm. Well,
let's talk about that.
Let's do. So they tried to tell us this week that they were on our side, meaning LGBTQ people, by keeping in place an Obama executive order that established non-discrimination rules for companies doing business with the federal government, federal contractors, both sexual orientation and gender identity and expression.
Now, why does the Family Research Council have no problem with this? Because they don't.
Why, Andy?
Well, because they are busy drafting a very, very broad religious freedom executive order, which would essentially, well, we don't know all the details, but what we're hearing is it would make taxpayer funds available for discrimination against LGBTQ people in social services, allow federally funded adoption agencies to discriminate against us, eliminate non-discrimination protections in order to make it possible to fire federal employers and contractors based on their sexual orientation or gender identity, allow federal employees to refuse to serve gay people if it offends their religious sensibilities, etc.
And probably allow the federal government not to hire LGBT people
and to
or give benefits to them.
Or, in other words, if you have a belief that marriage should be between a man and woman, gender is an immutable characteristic at birth, and if that, this could affect all kinds of federal benefits and law,
it could affect people by the tens of millions across the board. And it's just another one of these extremely broad religious freedom acts. And it's not going to forget the First Amendment Defense Act in Congress.
Which he favors.
Yeah, and they'll have no trouble passing. But this will just be an executive order that essentially wipes out the effectiveness of Obama's executive orders, both the contractors order and the standard federal employees non-discrimination order that was operative under Clinton, Bush, Obama, expanded by Obama to include gender identity.
Now, do you think in the short run, before Gorsuch gets on there are ways to legally challenge some of these things to get them struck down?
I think you can challenge them, but this is the looming volcano at the Supreme Court that is coming up there in any number of ways about religious freedom. Now, with Hobby Lobby having been decided the way it was, that was a huge opening of the door to the religious freedom argument. And I'm very skeptical that we're going to get anywhere with that unless we can scare Anthony Kennedy enough to convince him that this is going to have terrible consequences.
The beauty of America, in many ways, has been freedom of religion, but also freedom from religion. Which we've had since we at least aspired to in our Constitution from the beginning. And now we're becoming a theocracy, folks, for Christian white supremacists. And it's terrible. The other thing about Trump allowing the Obama order to stay in is they intend to eliminate the enforcement mechanism at the Department of Labor by letting the Office of Federal Contract Compliance sunset. Go away.
So you could have the order, but if no one's enforcing it, then whatever. The other rumor around it is that Pence wanted to kill it, and Jared Kushner saved it.
For a day, because of timing.
Yeah. And because they promised Pence, don't worry, we're going to do the broad religious freedom stuff very soon. And they may announce it. By the time you see this, they may already have announced it at the National Prayer Breakfast.
While we talk about all these things, I hope what's turning over in your mind is there are elections coming up every year, especially in 2018 when there are congressional elections and a third of the Senate is up. You've got to be plotting part of your work in your state, part of your work, in addition to all this resistance, has to be focusing on getting better candidates and getting them elected in those districts, because we have to overcome gerrymandering, which has left us on the short side of being able to win a lot of these districts. So it's going to take a Herculean effort.
Unless you think that it's too early to think about elections, President Donald J. Trump has already filed for re-election in 2020,
Yeah.
5 hours after he was inaugurated. Why? So that he could start raising money as a candidate, and so that he could kick in rules that made non-governmental organizations less able to criticize him as president because now he's a candidate, and that somehow hobbles them. Also, in the religious front, Jerry Falwell Jr., president of Liberty University, which his father founded, has been named to run a task force for Trump reevaluating higher education and the workings of the Department of Education.
This is as grotesque as it gets. And
because Betsy DeVos is not religious enough.
I mean, Donald Trump made a decision to consolidate the evangelical vote. He was told how to do it, and he did it. I mean,
well, he needed every vote he could get.
But despite all of his horrible behavior, horrible sexual behavior, et cetera, his grotesqueness.
Well, because they wanted the Supreme Court nominee, and they got it.
That's what they wanted.
And they want Jerry Falwell doing this, and he's handed it over to them.
And they want religious freedom, and now
in spite of what the New York Times said in a very stupid piece about Betsy DeVos being our friend.
Because she has a gay friend. That's ridiculous.
God, it's terrible.
And Jeff Sessions is now sailing through this, so we have no bulwark at the Justice Department against any of this. And the Attorney General is actually supposed to stand up to the president once in a while. That happened, of course, with the acting Attorney General. You saw, and
well, she did the right thing, and he's also entitled to fire her.
Yes,
so there you are.
Yes, he is. And DeVos going through, and Rick Perry, an anti-gay bigot. I mean, if any one of these were happening, years ago, we would have had a big deal about it. But they're almost all anti-gay.
Representative Paul Ryan's office has blocked petitions, email, and phone calls. The White House has taken down its phone comment line. So here's the new strategy. You call a Trump hotel and you ask for the reservations desk, and then you tell them what reservations you have about the Trump administration.
That's great. It's serious because you can't get through. And then some of the agencies are preemptively censoring themselves.
Yes.
The CDC has indefinitely postponed a long-planned LGBT youth summit. That they were going to have, and it's because they're afraid of Trump, and this was supposed to be a big deal, this conference.
Yeah, and congratulations to T.J. Lunardi, a gay man who worked for the State Department in Ukraine. He lived there in Kiev with his husband under the Obama administration. He was the deputy director of security operations at the U.S. Embassy in Kiev, and he said, Trump is a threat to the Constitution. I can't work for him, and he quit.
Great. And of course, 1,000 people who work for the State Department signed that letter saying that what you're doing with immigration.
The dissent cable?
Yes, absolutely.
And
those people are putting themselves on a list to get fired, too, even though they're not supposed to be able to retaliate against them.
Oh, good luck with that.
And folks, we're talking about LGBT issues, we're talking about social issues, we're talking about a lot of things. But, and Trump is trumpeting, how the market has gone up because of his...
Now it's going down.
Yeah, I know. But they're also unraveling all the financial regulations. And that is just going to lead to another 2008 crash, which will deplete all of our pension funds and retirement funds.
He's also doing this flip-flop with pharmaceuticals. Hang on for AIDS news. We'll get to that in a few minutes and explain all that to you. Meanwhile, 10 states are looking at criminalizing protesters.
Well,
the best thing that's happened in the last 10 days is all these protests. I'm so proud of everybody who rushed to the airports, everybody who rushed to Chuck Schumer's house last night, everybody who's out in the streets.
This is nothing new, though. I mean, protest was criminalized in the city of New York under Mayor Bloomberg, who arrested people protesting at the Republican convention who were doing nothing but exercising their First Amendment rights.
So what do you think of this idea of a general strike in 2 weeks?
2 weeks from now, we don't have to do the show?
February 17th.
Okay.
I
am for a general strike. Yes, I
a
am.
lovely idea. It's hard for me to imagine it's going to be big enough to be
We want
effective.
to do things that are going to make people sit up and take notice that the society cannot function without all of its people on board. And the Trump thing is about divide and conquer, them and us. And they need us in order to make this culture and society work.
I am hoping that what he is doing, all his garbage with the travel ban, his appointments, everything else, is slowly peeling off his support. But
well, the question is when a Trump voter wakes up, because they support the ban, when they wake up and say, "I'm getting screwed," hey, wait a minute, this is not what I had. I mean, I'm surprised that hasn't happened already, given all the billionaires
well, it's only been
who have
10
been appointed
days.
to the well, but that's been going on for months with these appointments. And if you don't recognize, that you're getting screwed, I don't know what to say to you. I keep saying we need to work on the 47% of people who didn't vote.
People engage in wishful thinking.
All right, some other news?
A few minutes away from the Trump administration, some good news. I'll give you good news. In Wyoming, a broad religious freedom bill was withdrawn. They decided it was too much. And in Colorado, a religious freedom bill died. That's all excellent news.
And in Georgia, the Court of Appeals there, remember we told you about this Judge Roper who denied name changes to trans people, saying it would create confusion and it was fraud? The Court of Appeals there said that's nonsense. They're not trying to defraud anyone. And it was, I believe it was a Judge Posner decision. Yes, it was. Okay. No. Sorry, that's another case. I'll get to that. Sorry, that was the Georgia Court of Appeals. And then going back a little bit, you remember President Obama? He was pretty good on many things. We told you about commuting the sentence of Chelsea Manning, but he also pardoned Peter Heidgard, 56, who was an Army captain who was convicted of conduct unbecoming in 1989 for having a relationship with a man. It was a felony. He couldn't get a job in Georgia, and this is now his conviction is wiped out.
There are various, we've heard about the opera. There's a great new documentary being made about the Lavender Scare. I hope that comes out soon, because that's going to be really relevant to all of this. And we are happy about the Boy Scouts changing their policy on transgender members. And congratulations to little 8-year-old Joey Maldonado.
Yes.
Who, and his fierce mother.
Who was in the process of filing an anti-discrimination suit in New Jersey.
Yep, Secaucus, New Jersey.
Where we are protected.
Yes. So they won a big victory for a lot of people, and that's great news. And of course, the right wing is freaked out about it.
And Joey said, I wasn't sad when they kicked me out. I was angry.
Congratulations to Jay Irwin, trans man. He's a professor at the University of Nebraska. And he ran for the school board of Ralston, Nebraska. That's him on the left. And the main candidate somehow, he was running for another office, and so he was out of it. So it became a write-in contest, and Jay won the election 36-4.
Very good.
You don't have to get a lot of votes to get elected in this country.
That is a landslide.
Out trans man on the school board in Ralston, Nebraska.
Yeah.
And in Texas, in New Hope, Texas, also a small town in Texas, the incumbent mayor, Jess Herbst, has come out as a trans woman. She has a wife and 2 daughters and has now revealed her identity to her constituents.
First openly transgender elected official in Texas history.
And everybody seems just fine with it. Another byproduct of the Trump administration, he's put in someone new at the EEOC. The EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, has been a great progressive force under the Obama administration, in large part because of its member, Hy Feldblum. Well, there's a new person running, a new Trump person running the EEOC, and so or nominated to run the EEOC. So they have withdrawn their participation in the very important case of a trans employee of a funeral home who they were supporting. The ACLU says it's going to step in and defend this employee because they expect the EEOC to withdraw. The EEOC asked for a 30-day delay in arguments on the case because they're changing their opinion.
You're going to do this?
Yes, and we have a lovely picture from a U.S. naval ship docked in Japan. The Navy chiefs and officers are getting training on trans service members issues on board this ship, and it just shows the commitment currently of the U.S. military to take seriously and move forward on issues related to their trans members. I thought that was quite moving.
I want to note a couple of people who passed away this past week. One is Stuart Timmons. He was a gay historian, died at the age of 60. He wrote a very acclaimed biography of Harry Hay, who was the gay pioneer from the 1950s. He wrote for All the Press, The Advocate, Frontiers, LA Weekly, and with Lillian Faderman wrote Gay LA, A History of Sexual Outlaws, Power Politics, and Lipstick Lesbians. A much honored journalist and only 60 years old.
Yeah. And also in LA, Judge William Norris, he had ruled in favor of Perry Watkins, who was discharged from the Army for being gay, and Perry was one of the first to really fight his discharge.
Perry Watkins served as openly gay for a long time in Vietnam, did drag acts for the other soldiers, and then was, when they were, tired of him, I guess, they got rid of him, even though they knew about him. So that was a very, very important decision about equal protection for LGBT people.
Thank you to the female gymnasts of the University of North Carolina who showed up in, those are Nike shirts, but they say "Be True" in rainbow colors, and they are wearing them in opposition to North Carolina's still in effect HB2.
Being challenged in the courts.
Yeah, maybe. Well, it is being challenged in the courts, but of course the Department of Justice was a big part of that suit and is expected to perhaps change its mind on pursuing that, but the ACLU and others are continuing to fight it. Meanwhile, HRC, the Human Rights Campaign, is coming under some criticism for planning a big gala fundraiser in Charlotte, North Carolina, at the same time that everybody's supposed to be boycotting North Carolina. But they're going right in there with their annual fundraiser. And there was an annoying story also out of North Carolina of a lesbian who went to her doctor and noticed on her chart that the doctor was keeping that there was listed medical condition, lesbianism. Really? So she thought she might be able to call in sick.
It's 2017. But the clock is turning back.
Yeah.
And
and congratulations to model Hannah Gabby Odiele.
Yeah,
I think that's, I'm guessing on her pronunciation.
Yeah.
She has come out as intersex, which is still a pretty brave thing to do these days.
Okay, let's do some international news.
Let's do.
Well, very big news in Britain where they passed, we told you how Alan Turing, who was persecuted for being gay, was pardoned so many years later after he died. And now up to 100,000 may be covered by this new order, which pardons people for
I thought they sort of
sex.
announced it before, but now they're confirming it.
Yes.
Maybe the new government is confirming it.
And it does apply in some cases to people who've died. The family can apply for a pardon and that kind of stuff. And our friend Peter Tatchell is saying that their friends ought to be able to apply on their behalf as well.
And that it doesn't cover enough people, that in fact there are other people convicted under different laws that are not covered by this pardon. So he says, yes, this is good, but there's still more work to do.
Yes.
And I was quite taken by Prince Charles, as long as we're in Britain, saying, warning that against forgetting the horrific lessons of World War II.
Did he actually do that?
Do not forget the horrific lessons of World War II. That was a Trump comment and against the travel ban.
All right. In Guernsey, which is a crown dependency in the English Channel, a gay man says he's not going to pay his £7.94, which is a tax that goes to the upkeep of churches. He says, they treat me as a sinner. Why should I pay? I'm going to donate it to charity.
Hey. There are a lot of taxes I don't want to pay for government institutions I don't want to support.
But these go directly to churches.
Well, and a lot of money goes to, the salary of Donald Trump that I don't want to pay either.
Okay.
But I'm not doing a tax thing.
Yet.
In Japan, a man has filed for survivor family benefits after the death of his partner of 20 years. The partner was stabbed to death a couple of years ago, but the guy has just filed for survivor benefits, and I think he's the first to do so for a same-sex partner in Japan.
In Manchester, England, a transgender woman, obviously who had been a man, in an ultra-Orthodox community, has been denied by a judge, not a religious judge, by a civic judge, direct contact with her 5 children on the basis that they would be shunned by the ultra-Orthodox community. So she is now allowed
Sounds like Scientology.
She is now allowed to write them cards on the holidays, and that's it. The father claimed he wanted to talk to the kids, talk to them what's going on with them, but the mother insisted it would be better to tell them that their father had died or been hospitalized in a psychiatric ward. She denies this.
One must question the human race sometimes.
Well, if you want to see something positive, I was in Ireland this weekend for the wedding of, we have a picture of Billy Desmond and Bernard Lynch. Bernard is a big gay activist priest in New York. There they are getting married in the west of Ireland.
Catholic priest.
Catholic priest.
He's been here. They've both been here.
West of Ireland. As we speak, they are meeting with President Higgins of Ireland, who invited them because he couldn't come to the wedding. We also gave them. There's the hotel. This is in by the wild Atlantic on the coast of West Ireland, and there's rainbow flags flying all over the place. It was quite moving to see all this, and congratulations to them.
In Norway, the Lutheran Church has adopted language for same-sex weddings. They are the major religious, I don't know if they're a state religion, maybe they are in Norway, but anyway, they're going to perform same-sex weddings. And in Estonia, a court has recognized the marriage in Sweden of 2 men now living in Estonia.
And in Venezuela, the first Venezuelan birth certificate recognizing 2 lesbian mothers as legal parents was issued last week.
They were married in Argentina and are back in Venezuela, and the Venezuelan government or court is saying, okay, they're the moms. And in Mexico, the Supreme Court has ruled that same-sex couples are entitled to assisted procreation in the same way that heterosexual couples are.
Good.
But in Sri Lanka, the cabinet has rejected a sexual orientation non-discrimination law because it violates their anti-sodomy law. You can't not discriminate against people if they're criminals.
Right. Well, this... All right, AIDS news. So Trump said he was going to lower the cost of pharmaceuticals. He sits with the pharmaceutical people and he caves.
Well, he said originally that he was going to lower the cost of pharmaceuticals by using the bargaining power of Medicare to introduce more competition or bullying or whatever method he wanted to use to drive down prices of pharmaceuticals. Then he sits down with these executives of the pharmaceutical companies and he says, Medicare is price fixing. It's killing those pharmaceutical companies. We're going to lower taxes and deregulate the pharmaceutical industry, and that will help them lower prices.
To all of you who voted for Trump, let me just tell you what this is. That's called a bait and switch.
For all of you who say that he's fulfilling his promises. The other thing is that we had one tiny moment of being happy that he had killed the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade agreement, because that includes protectionist rules for these big pharmaceutical companies. And he said at this meeting that he wants to make sure that those pharmaceutical companies have those protectionist rules, because other countries are getting a free ride by using generics.
You can't isolate yourself from the rest of the world and then they demand that they do what you want.
He said it was very unfair.
Yeah. Well, of course, the other big thing that he said during the campaign was, "I'll never touch Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid." But they're out to destroy all of them. But the first thing they're going to go after is Medicaid, and through the Affordable Care Act and all that kind of stuff. When they do this, when they turn it into a block grant program, and you may not think this affects you because you're not on Medicaid, and you get your insurance elsewhere, but it will force the states to pick up a lot of these costs for the poor people in their states,
which they do not want to do,
and will leave nothing else for your roads, your traffic lights, your schools, or anything else.
That it also makes it no longer an entitlement program of any kind. It puts a cap on how much money the state has to spend on this. So instead of having people apply for reimbursements for their costs or whatever to the Medicaid program, now the state just has a finite amount of money, and everybody is suddenly fighting for that.
Instead of getting costs under control by using the bargaining power of the federal government, they're just basically, they want to end it.
Exactly.
And you think you're not going to need this beyond the other services. When you need to go to a nursing home, generally at some point you can't afford to pay for it, and then Medicaid steps in and picks it up and keeps you there. I don't know what's going to happen after this.
A lot of people on Medicaid, and what Obamacare did was put a lot of people on Medicaid, and this is really going to undermine it and hurt us all.
Okay.
U.S. Attorney in New York, Preet Bharara, is famous for his going after the financial industry and criminals of various sorts. Politicians, definitely. Well, he's now suing New York City on behalf of an HIV-positive man, Raymond Parker.
Got a picture of him.
Because the New York Police Department refused him a job as a 911 operator because his T cells were too low. This is a discriminatory action on their part.
Right.
Violates the Americans with Disabilities Act. They didn't find out, anything legitimate about why not to hire him. They just said, "Oh, we think you're going to be too costly because your T cells are too low," and so now Preet Bharara is suing them.
All right.
NYPD is negotiating a new job offer and back pay for him since July 2013, but no word that that's been affected yet.
Here's the Richard Posner case, a Reagan-appointed judge, but he's been on our side in a lot of things. He overturned an immigration judge's refusal to grant relief to an HIV-positive man from Honduras who was seeking protection under the Convention Against Torture. And Posner said, "You're ignoring expert testimony about what you face when you're HIV positive in Honduras. You're assumed to be gay." This guy isn't gay. But all three judges who ruled in the case were Reagan judges. So there is hope there that on some of these things, even conservative judges get it.
Absolutely. It's a very mixed bag these days. There are a lot of people out there. Look, I'm very heartened by the resistance. I'm sorry it's had to come to this, but the fact that people are suddenly shocked out of their complacency is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I believe that this will continue at a high rate and that people will run for office and people will do things.
And it was on full display at the SAG-AFTRA Awards of my union, which you may have seen.
Now, I know you want to run that video, so we should rush through things to be able to get to that.
Check out Katie Couric's Gender Revolution special, National Geographic, February 6th at 9 o'clock Eastern.
There will be 10 new episodes of Will and Grace later this year.
I can heartily recommend Jitney on Broadway, the August Wilson play, the first in his 10 play Cycle.
Queer Eye for the Straight Guy may be returning. Not sure about who's in the cast, maybe on Netflix. Wolf Video has a couple of new gay films available, Jonathan and Akron.
And Devil Wears Prada is being turned into a musical by Elton John and Paul Rudnick.
And Butterfly is coming back with Clive Owen, and David Henry Hwang is rewriting it, updating some of the information. I Am Michael with James Franco got panned by the New York Times. Some gay winners at the SAG Awards. Sarah Paulson and Lily Tomlin, and Orange is the New Black. And I thought Hidden Figures win was interesting. Maybe they'll come from behind and win the Oscar. I'd be okay with that.
Maybe.
I saw it. I liked it.
Maybe.
All right, but John Hurt.
John Hurt, great actor, died at the age of 77. Often played the outsider, whether it was Elephant Man, and of course, he also played a gay man in Love and Death on Long Island. But he really broke through playing a role that everybody told him not to do, playing the effeminate homosexual Quentin Crisp in England in 1975 in a brilliant movie. And we thought we would bring you the trial scene there. The cops have come up and testified that he's been trying to solicit men, and he responds this way.
Take the book in your right hand.
I swear by Almighty God the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Your name?
Quentin Crisp.
Quentin. You are a male person, I presume.
Yes.
Your address? Full address?
97 Bewley Street, London, Southwest 3, England.
Do you deny the facts as given in evidence by the two police officers?
Yes.
Are you saying that the police are liars?
No.
What are you saying, then?
I am saying that I think they were mistaken.
Do you deny that you were in the places mentioned at the times mentioned?
Oh, not at all. No, I was definitely in Catherine Street at 6 o'clock. I remember this particularly because it was then that the two gentlemen who later arrested me came up and spoke to me for the first time.
They what?
They asked to see my papers. I showed them my exemption papers, which say that I am suffering from sexual perversion.
Is this true?
Yes, sir.
It is certainly true that I am a sexual pervert, but I've never been quite sure about the word suffering.
You are a sexual pervert.
Yes.
You are attracted to men and not to women.
Yes.
You go to bed with men.
I have done sometimes, yes.
Do you deny that you spoke to men in the street?
I deny that I approached anyone or that I spoke to anyone before he spoke to me.
But you spoke to men.
Only if they demanded some reply.
In Catherine Street?
I don't think I said anything in Catherine Street. It was there that a man came up to me and said, "Forgive me, you effing pansy, you ought to be locked up." And I didn't reply, because this really didn't seem to demand any reply.
And in Tavistock Street?
I think it was in Tavistock Street that a man came up to me and pushed me in the chest, but I can't be absolutely sure.
Why not?
Because that sort of thing happens to me all the time.
Mr. Crisp, are you saying that the police officers misinterpreted what they saw?
I am saying that they made a very natural mistake. They had seen from my papers that I was homosexual. Good heavens, they could have told from my appearance, as you can now. They were watching me from 15 yards or so when I had these brief exchanges with various men, and it may well have seemed from a distance...
But you are saying, on oath, that in no case did you make the first approach.
My lord!
No.
I beg your pardon, sir. Sir, look at me. I wear lipstick, I wear rouge, I wear mascara on my eyelashes, I dye my hair, I wear flamboyant clothes, far more outre than those I'm wearing now. I am a self-evident, self-professed, effeminate homosexual for all the world to see. How could I hope to solicit anybody in broad daylight in a crowded London street looking as I do? What would I expect but a curse and a blow? No. My appearance sets me apart from the rest of humanity. It is not easy for me to make human contacts. With strangers, it is almost impossible. I learnt many years ago the golden rule of my life. In public places, I do not speak to anyone unless they speak to me. I do not look at anyone unless they demand that I look at them. It is the only way I know of getting safely to my destination.
Have you anything else to say, Mr. Crisp?
Yes. I have never refrained from any course of action on the ground that it was illegal or immoral. But I no longer ask strange men for money because I do not think that I would get it. Perhaps my very existence is a form of importuning. Otherwise, I am not guilty as charged.
Thank you. Please return to the dock.
Well, I flatter myself London has not seen a performance like that since Sybil Thorndyke's St. Joan.
Do you know he is a homosexual?
Yes.
And yet you say he is a friend of yours?
Yes.
Do you know he is a homosexual?
Yes.
And yet you describe him as respectable.
Yes.
Do you know he is a homosexual?
Yes.
And yet you call him a good man.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Crisp,
Stand up.
have you any other witnesses to character?
About 10, I think.
I am tired of this recital of your praises. There is insufficient evidence to convict.
By which he means the police are liars.
Case dismissed.
It's lovely to see people standing by outcasts.
And John Hurt was also in your favorite movie, V for Vendetta.
Oh, yes. Well, he played Chancellor Sutler, a very evil character. He could do that, too.
Andy watches that movie every time it's on TV.
I do. It's about rebellion.
We also had the Oscar nominations come out while we were doing other things. I was very happy to see Moonlight get 8 nominations. I was happy to see Mahershala Ali win Best Supporting Actor at the SAG Awards, but they got overtaken for Best Cast by Hidden Figures, and I don't think they're going to win much at the Oscars.
We'll see.
8 nominations. I still think it's the movie of the year, but I did like Hidden Figures. It's very conventional. It's very feel good, but it is a terrific story, and those women are just absolutely fantastic.
And I like Fences because it's August Wilson.
I thought it was too stagey.
Okay.
All right, we'll be back with more of this next week. Viva la Revolution.